In the sun-scorched sands of Waset, beneath the towering shadows of the temple walls, lived a girl named Kiya, young, quiet, and cursed by whispers. Born under an unseasonal blood moon and during a temple fire that killed 3 priests, the villagers believed she brought bad omens with her very breath. Her mother died giving birth, and her father, once a proud stonemason, vanished mysteriously a year later. Left to the mercy of a suspicious community, Kiya became a ghost among the living, seen but never embraced. She grew up alone, surviving on scraps and favors, her presence often met with spitting and muttered prayers. Yet, Kiya never caused harm to anyone. She spoke softly, avoided conflict, and spent her days helping the sick or gathering herbs for the village healer. Still, when a young nobleman died of fever after visiting the healer's hut, the villagers didn't blame fate, they blamed Kiya. Witch, they called her, bearer of death. No one remembered the kindness she had shown. They only remembered the night sky, the day she was born, and the flames that once licked the temple walls. It was the priest Neferu, respected and feared, who declared her guilty before the gods. No trial, no chance to speak. She has defiled the balance of Ma'at, he said before the crowd. Let her be returned to the earth, where her sins may be swallowed by the dust. That very night, under torchlight and prayers of condemnation, Kiya was taken beyond the village edge. They dug a shallow pit in the desert, a hole barely deep enough to hide shame, and forced her into it. Her arms were bound, her mouth gagged with linen soaked in salt water, to silence her curses. She looked up at the faces, some blank, others angry, most afraid. Only one face trembled with doubt, a man in plain linen, a passing trader who had stopped for water and witnessed the ritual with wide, horrified eyes. His name was Sahir. He said nothing then, afraid of the crowd. But as the sand began to fall on her body, covering her legs, her chest, her face, something inside Sahir shifted. He would not sleep that night. He would not rest, for something in Kiya's eyes told him what the village would never believe: she was innocent. That night, Sahir lay beneath his travel canopy, eyes open, heart heavy. The stars above the desert flickered like the silent eyes of gods, watching all, judging all. He could still see her, Kiya, her eyes wide with fear, her body trembling as the sand swallowed her inch by inch. He had seen death before. The road was filled with its bandits, sickness, betrayal. But this was different. This was not a death by fate. This was murder masked as ritual. Sahir was no priest, no warrior. He was a trader of cloth and spices, a man who sought profit, not justice. But something in him would not be still. He thought of his sister, long dead from a snake bite, and how her face had frozen in a similar way, afraid, helpless. He had loved her dearly, and for the first time in years, he wept. By dawn, the village was quiet again. The people, satisfied that balance had been restored, went about their lives. Children laughed, women returned to market stalls, and men sharpened tools. No one spoke of the girl buried alive. To them, she was gone, erased like a stain from stone. But Sahir could not forget. He approached the edge of the burial site under the pretense of gathering desert herbs for trade. His hands shook as he stood over the fresh mound of sand. He knelt, ears tuned to the wind, heart pounding. If she's alive, if there's even a chance, he whispered. He dropped to his knees and began to dig. The sand was loose but dry, cruel in its silence. Minutes passed. His arms ached, his nails tore, sweat poured from his brow. Then he felt it, a foot, cold, still. His heart dropped, but he kept digging. Then a leg, a hand. Her face, covered in dust, eyes closed. Sahir pressed his ear to her chest silence. He slammed his palms against her sternum again and again, begging the gods to give her breath. And then a gasp, a weak, broken gasp, as if the desert had briefly given up its prize. She coughed, violently, spitting out grains of sand, her body heaving. Sahir cradled her, whispering, "You're safe now. You're safe." But she wasn't. Not really. He had saved her from death. Yes, but not from a world that wanted her buried. Not from the truth that now he, too, was part of a dangerous lie. Sahir wrapped Kiya in a rough cloak and carried her away from the burial site. His steps fast but careful. The desert wind had picked up, masking his tracks and covering the disturbed grave, perhaps a blessing from the gods, or perhaps just luck. Kiya clung to life, drifting in and out of consciousness. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold, her lips cracked and bloodless. "Just a little further," Sahir murmured, though he had no destination in mind, only distance. He led her to a cave he had seen days ago while collecting salt stones for trade, a hollow in the cliffs just beyond the ridge. There, he laid her down, lit a small fire, and fed her sips of honey water from his travel pouch. It was a cruel irony he was trained in trade, not healing, but in that moment, he became a healer, a protector, and a fugitive all at once. By nightfall, Kiya opened her eyes fully. Her gaze was blank at first, then sharp with fear. She sat up suddenly, backing away from him, eyes wild. "You're safe," Sahir said quickly, raising his hands. "I'm not one of them. I saw what they did. I couldn't let you die." Her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but could only croak out a broken sound. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She covered her face, not out of shame, but out of pain too heavy to bear. "Why?" she rasped finally. "Why save me?" Sahir hesitated. "Because what they did was wrong. You don't bury someone for being different, for being blamed." Kiya stared at him, trying to read his truth. Then slowly, she nodded. The fire crackled between them, the only sound in the night. "They'll look for me," she whispered. "Not to finish the burial, but to silence the shame if anyone finds out I'm alive." Sahir knew she was right. The villagers feared curses more than guilt. If they learned she lived, it would threaten their sense of justice and their reputations. "Then we tell no one," Sahir said. "Not yet. You stay hidden. Heal. Then we decide what comes next." Kiya closed her eyes again, this time from exhaustion, not fear. As Sahir watched over her, he realized something terrifying and certain. Saving her was only the beginning. Now, they both carried a truth buried deeper than any grave. The days that followed were tense and quiet. Sahir kept Kiya hidden in the cave, traveling to the village only once a day at dawn to gather supplies, food, cloth, herbs, anything to keep her alive and unnoticed. He told the villagers he was preparing for a long journey westward and needed trade goods. No one questioned him. After all, he was just a passing trader, a harmless outsider. But Sahir knew eyes watched him. The desert has a way of listening. And when something unnatural happens, like a girl escaping the grave, the wind carries whispers farther than any voice. Kiya's strength slowly returned. She still flinched at loud sounds, still dreamed of choking sand and angry chants. But her eyes began to sharpen, and her voice returned like a bird learning to sing again. She spoke little about her past, only that her mother was once a priestess, and her father had carved sacred symbols on temple doors before he vanished. "They feared my blood," she said one evening, staring at the fire. "My mother's power, my father's legacy. It scared them. And when the temple fire came, they needed a name to blame." Sahir listened closely. There was pain in her words, but no bitterness. That struck him. She had every reason to hate the village, yet all he saw in her was sadness, not revenge. "We'll find a new path for you," he told her. "Somewhere far. Thebes, Heliopolis. You'll be free." But freedom was a fragile dream. That same night, as Sahir returned from the village, he noticed something strange. A boy following him barefoot, silent. When Sahir stopped, the boy vanished behind a dune. He said nothing to Kiya, but slept lightly that night, dagger tucked beneath his robe. In the morning, just as the sun rose, a strange sound echoed through the cave, a flute. High, slow, and haunting. Kiya jolted awake. "That sound," she whispered. "It's the mourner's call. It means someone has died, or someone's death has been questioned." Sahir rushed outside. On the cliff above, etched in the sand by careful fingers, were 5 words written in ancient script. "The dead must stay dead." Someone knew. Someone had seen. And now, the desert wasn't just watching. It was warning. The secret was no longer safe. In the temple heart of Waset, beneath columns carved with prayers to Ra and Anubis, priest Neferu knelt in meditation. His fingers traced the grooves of a stone tablet, lips murmuring sacred hymns. But his mind was elsewhere, haunted by rumors. A traitor asking too many questions. A child claiming to see a ghost walking at the edge of the cliffs. And worst of all, a burial site found disturbed, as if something had crawled out. He opened his eyes slowly. "He lives," he whispered. Impossible. And yet, Neferu was not a man who believed in accidents. He had silenced many before heretics, rebels, even innocent voices, if it meant preserving Ma'at, the balance of the world. Kiya had been a threat, not just because of superstition, but because of what she carried in her blood. Her mother, priestess of forbidden rites. Her father, a stonecutter who had carved more than just doorways. He had etched secret names, hidden truths, messages the temple was sworn to erase. That bloodline could not be allowed to rise. "Summon the seers," Neferu ordered. "Let them read the winds." Meanwhile, back in the cave, Sahir and Kiya prepared for escape. "We can't stay," he said firmly. "Someone's watching." The mourner's call wasn't for someone else. It was a warning to us. Kiya nodded. She was stronger now, her steps steady, her voice clear. "Then we go," she said, "but not without knowing who did this to me. Why me, and not the others who had sin in their hearts?" Sahir paused. "You want the truth." "I need it," she replied, "or I will never be free." They left at dusk, cloaked in sand-colored robes, faces wrapped like desert travelers. By nightfall, they slipped through the edge of the village, past the market where Kiya once sold herbs, and the well where she had fetched water as a child. It all felt like a past life, one she had buried, or that had buried her. Unbeknownst to them, a pair of eyes watched from a rooftop, a boy no older than 10, sent by Nefaru. He didn't speak, just turned and ran toward the temple. The game of shadows had begun. Kiya's resurrection was not just a scandal. It was a threat to powerful men and ancient lies. And in Waset, the gods, the only ones watching. They fled Waset under the stars, following dry riverbeds and camel tracks known only to seasoned traders. Sahir guided Kiya across the land like a shadow, moving at night, hiding by day. But in his mind, questions burned. Who was Kiya, truly? What did the priests fear so deeply that they'd bury a girl alive? And why had Nefaru, a man known for precision, acted in such haste and rage? Kiya walked beside him, quiet but resolute. There was no more trembling in her steps, only purpose. "There's a village ahead," Sahir whispered as they approached a small oasis. "Old friends of mine trade there. We can rest, maybe gather news." Kiya nodded, pulling her hood tighter. "I need something from their temple," she said softly. "A scroll my father once hid there. A scroll of names." Sahir frowned. "What kind of names?" "Names the temple erased. Families, priests, rebels, people who questioned the order. My father etched their stories in stone. The scroll is a copy." "Proof." Sahir stopped. "You're saying your father was part of a resistance?" "No," she said. "He was a record keeper. He believed the truth should never be buried. But when they found out, he disappeared. And now, I know why they feared me." The oasis village was quiet, its streets lit by oil lamps. Sahir led Kiya to a small stable and left her there while he checked the temple grounds. To his surprise, the shrine was poorly guarded. The villagers, more interested in trade than rituals, left the sacred space nearly untouched. Inside, behind a cracked pillar, he found a clay jar sealed with wax, hidden behind a crumbling relief of the sun god. He returned with the jar, handing it to Kiya, who opened it with trembling hands. Inside, wrapped in rotting linen, was the scroll. Faded, but legible. Dozens of names, dates, symbols of erased houses. "This is it," she whispered. This is what Nefaru feared. As they studied the parchment by firelight, Sahir realized the magnitude of what they held. This wasn't just history, it was evidence. Evidence that the priests had rewritten truth to preserve power. "If this gets out," Sahir said, "they'll stop at nothing." Kiya's eyes narrowed. "Then we make sure it's not buried again. Let the truth rise like the Nile after flood. Let it drown their lies." Word traveled faster than footsteps in the desert. By the time Sahir and Kiya left the oasis village, Nefaru's reach had already stretched across the sands. Messengers in priestly white, faces veiled, spread warnings of heresy. "A witch walks the land," they whispered to temple guards and market elders. "She carries a cursed scroll that defies the gods." But the scroll Kiya held was not a curse, it was a mirror, reflecting truths buried by time and fear. As the pair journeyed north, closer to the city of Akhet, Sahir noticed more eyes on them. Too many coincidences. Too many strangers watching too closely. "They know," he said one night as they set camp beneath a moonless sky. "Nefaru must have told the temples. They'll come for us before we reach the city." Kiya didn't flinch. "Then we stop hiding. We go to the scribes in Akhet. If anyone values truth, it's them." Sahir hesitated. "And if they burn the scroll to protect their power?" Kiya looked at him, a fire in her eyes. "Then we carve the truth in stone." But before they could reach Akhet, their path was blocked. In a narrow pass between the dunes, cloaked figures emerged, 5 of them, silent and armed. Temple guards. Their leader stepped forward. "The girl," he said to Sahir. "Hand her over. The gods demand it." Sahir stepped in front of Kiya. "The gods do not bury the innocent," he said calmly. "Only men do that." The guard sneered. "You defy the temple?" Kiya raised her voice for the first time, loud and firm. "I defy the lie. You call me cursed, yet it is you who kill out of fear." She unwrapped the scroll and held it high. "This is the curse you fear list of your crimes. Let the wind carry their names to every corner of Kemet." In a moment of chaos, she threw the scroll into the wind. The guards lunged forward, but it was too late. The fragile linen tore into the air, pages fluttering, names flying like whispers into the desert. Sahir grabbed Kiya's hand. "Run!" They vanished into the dunes as shouts echoed behind them. The scroll was lost, but its message was free. The desert had taken it, and the sand, once their tomb, now became their ally. And the sand carries no secrets forever. Back in Wasit, the temple walls trembled not from wind, but from fear. Priest Neferu stood before a circle of elders, their faces pale under flickering torchlight. "The scroll was real," he confessed, pacing the cold stone floor. "And now the names are out, blown across the land. Villages may find them. Scribes may record them. If the people learn what we erased, then we will no longer hold the power of truth," one elder finished, his voice hollow. "And if truth does not come from us, it will come from rebellion." Silence followed thick, dangerous. Neferu clenched his fists. "We must restore order. Find the girl. Burn whatever pieces remain. Silence the traitor, and remind the people that defiance leads to burial." As the temple began its purge, Sahir and Kiya took shelter in the outskirts of Akhet, blending into crowds of merchants and riverfolk. The air smelled of papyrus, ink, and wet clay, a city of scribes and secrets. "If we stay hidden," Sahir whispered, "we live. But if we act again, we risk everything." Kiya's gaze wandered toward a group of children drawing stories in the dust with reeds. "If we do nothing, their future will be shaped by lies. What they know of justice, gods, and power will be stained by fear." Her voice was calm, but her heart was aflame. That night, they sought out an old friend of Sahir's, a scribe named Setep, who once copied royal edicts before turning rogue. He now lived in a hidden chamber behind a weaver's shop, transcribing forbidden poetry and ancient myths no longer told aloud. "You brought danger to my door," Setep grumbled as he read the last scraps Kiya had saved. "But you also brought truth, and truth, when buried, becomes fire." Setep offered a solution: to transcribe the scroll's contents onto pottery shards, scatter them through different cities, and let the people discover the names themselves, not by force, but by curiosity, a seed of change. Words are harder to silence when they belong to no one, Sitep said. The temple cannot burn what it cannot find, Kiya agreed. The truth would not be shouted. It would be whispered, carved, passed hand to hand. They didn't need an army. They needed belief. And belief, once sparked, burned longer than fear. As dawn approached, the first shard was etched. A name long buried returned to the world. The rebellion of memory had begun. Weeks passed, and shards of pottery, each marked with forbidden names, dates, and temple crimes, began to appear across the cities of Kemet. In markets, by riverbanks, in the hands of curious children and wandering scribes, the fragments spread like seeds on the Nile wind. Some dismissed them as myths. Others felt a chill of recognition. But a few began to ask questions. Who were these erased names? Why were they hidden? And what truth did the temples bury in the sand? In Akhet, whispers grew louder. Scribes began to transcribe the shards into scrolls. Minstrels wove fragments into songs. A potter painted symbols from one shard into the glaze of his finest bowl. And somewhere near the docks, an elder told her grandson, "I remember that name. He was a good man. The temple said he vanished, but now I know he was erased." Truth, once buried, was rising like smoke from hot coals. In Waset, Neferu raged as news of the fragments reached him. "They mock the gods," he thundered. "This girl, this child we buried, she has become a storm." But the more he tried to stop the spread, the more invisible it became. The scroll had been destroyed, yes, but memory cannot be unburned, and fear, once broken, does not return easily. Meanwhile, Sahir and Kiya remained in hiding, watching the change unfold. From rooftops and back alleys, they saw graffiti scrawled on temple walls, buried but not forgotten. They saw lanterns hung at night in rows of 4, each one representing a forgotten name. Kiya's name, once cursed, had become a symbol. "I never wanted to be remembered like this," she said quietly, watching children draw her likeness in the sand. "You're not," Sahir replied. "They remember the truth you carried, that's all." But danger still loomed. The temple would not surrender so easily. Neferu had sent new hunters, men loyal not to faith, but to fear. He knew he could not silence the message anymore, but he could silence its voice. "Find her," he told them. "Not to bury her this time, but to erase her completely." The truth was alive, yes, but so was the danger. Kiya and Sahir had lit the spark. Now they had to protect it, even if the flames began to burn too close. Because revolutions don't always begin with swords. Sometimes they begin with broken clay. The sun rose over Akhet, golden and heavy, casting long shadows over a city on the edge of awakening. The people had heard the whispers, read the shards, and now they watched the temples with new eyes, not with reverence, but with suspicion. Change was coming. And at the center of it, though unseen, stood a girl once buried alive, Kiya. Her name no longer cursed, but carried like a quiet prayer. Still, the threat had not passed. The hunters sent by Neferu drew closer with each passing day. Sahir, always scanning the streets, knew they could not remain in the city much longer. "We've done what we came to do," he told Kiya. "The message is out. We should go disappear, start over." But Kiya had already made up her mind. "They silenced my parents. They tried to silence me, but I lived. And now I will speak." That evening, during a gathering of scribes and teachers beneath the open sky, Kiya stepped forward. Wrapped in linen and courage, she stood beneath the statues of long-forgotten gods and told her story, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with clarity. She spoke of her mother, the priestess punished for teaching women how to read the stars. She spoke of her father, the stonemason who carved forbidden truths. She spoke of her burial, her rescue, the scroll, and the names now returned to the world. The crowd listened in stunned silence. Then, one by one, they bowed their heads not to worship, but to witness. In that moment, Kiya was no longer the cursed child. She was a keeper of memory, a voice for the forgotten. The very next day, the hunters arrived, but they were too late. The city had seen her. The scribes had written her words. 100 hands now carried the flame she lit. Sahir led her to the edge of the city, and there they watched the river bend around Aket like an embrace. "You are no longer in hiding," he said. "You are a storm now." Kiya smiled faintly. "I was once buried in shame, but now they build stories from my name. Let them." And as they turned toward the road ahead, a whisper rode the desert wind behind them, soft but steady. The dead must stay dead unless they rise with truth. Kiya had been buried alive and came back as a legend. The sand, it seemed, had given her not a tomb but a throne. And so ends the tale of Kiya, the girl buried not by death, but by fear, and the traitor who dared to unearth more than just a body. In a world where truth was silenced and power was worshipped, it was courage, not magic, that turned a curse into a cause. Kiya's story reminds us that no matter how deeply lies are buried, truth has a way of rising piece by piece, voice by voice, heart by heart. Now, we want to hear from you. What did this story mean to you? Would you have made the same choices as Sahir or Kiya? Do you think truth always wins in the end, or does it need protectors to survive? Let us know in the comments below. We read every word, and your thoughts matter. And if this tale moved you, inspired you, or opened your eyes, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more powerful stories from the ancient world. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the ones buried in silence rise to become the voice of a generation.